Good morning, everyone. It's been a while since I've been on, so I figured I'd jump on here and just spill out a little more um, about some of these things that I've talked about over the past 2 years in the Truth and Trust group, which again, I see a lot of people wanting to post certain things in here. I don't see the point. There's so many other groups out there with all this other, information. Um, People want to go over all the latest and greatest Trump stuff, conspiracy stuff, all that, and that's all well and good. They can put that on their site and page, and you can go there for it. I don't put that stuff up here because I'm constantly working on other things. But anyhow, I want to talk more about the very basics of things. I wanted to discuss of course, birth certificates, birth registration. The more we go over this, the better it is for people. People haven't heard from me in a while. I haven't updated the website. I've been very busy on my own stuff, as usual, working on things, always trying to build something. When I'm ready to release something, I will. It's just going to take a while. That's just the way things are. It's divine timing, has its own time. So with that said, I'm doing a lot of, research, always researching, trying to boil things down into easier and easier concepts, because the basic principles are always the same. The more we can understand it from a simpler perspective, the easier it is to apply. And application is where I see most people fail, because they don't know how to apply the concepts, or they think that the other side that they're applying the concepts against or to, or whatever word you want to use, is just going to understand what they're doing and move aside and give them some sort of relief. And that's just not the reality. It's not how it works, So with that said, again, I want to get into some of this birth certificate stuff. Again, is all about franchises. I mean, it's all about entities and corporate, and who has what, who can take which rights from who. And that's really, at the end of the day, the entire birth certificate registration scam is all about taking your rights by your consent. Even though it's ignorant consent, it's still taking your rights by consent. They're still getting you to consent to give up your inherent rights to property, and lock you into obligation, and also a lower status. So if you look up the definition of status in the law dictionary, Black's Fourth, it'll tell you, actually, I think it may even be Black's Seventh I was looking in. It tells you the three categories of civil law, and they are the law of status, the law of obligation, and the law of property. All right, so those are the three things that they are going to completely take from you when they can, and they do that by your consent, because you don't understand how this game is working. Everybody thinks it works by going to school and being successful and being taught this, that, and the other, but no one ever questions the elephants in the room. Where did the information come from, Professor so-and-so? Who did the research on that? Who funded the research? How do we know that's accurate? Where did that come from? And you get the usual, that's just the way things are. Well, it's not just the way things are, There wasn't a registration of birth years and years and years ago unless it was in the family Bible. Why did they switch it over? Well, because they had to mortgage everybody's souls off. So again, if you look at civil law and you look at the three categories that make up civil law, you can see very easily that they've got each category covered from birth, so that they could take your birthrights away without you ever even knowing it, without your parents ever knowing it. Then you continue on through life and you experience these IRS issues, these employment issues, this credit issues, and loans and money and all this shit. And it all boils down to those very three basic principles and categories of civil law and those rights that were taken from you at birth. This is nothing new to me. It's nothing new to a lot of you guys watching this. You've all heard this, probably seen it. Okay, my whole intention is to keep regurgitating it, to boil it down so it's very simple. Now, let's look at the three categories of civil law. How would you take those rights back? Okay, we're going to also look at the Constitution, because so many people are still under the belief that the Constitution has anything to do with them or their protection. It's got nothing to do with you at all. It wasn't even written for you or your posterity, and you're not the people, okay? The people are the people, the posterity of the nobility that created the organization called the United States, which is not the United States of America, the 13 colonies at the time united. It wasn't that. Okay, the United States is a separate entity. It was created in bankruptcy, for bankruptcy, and they wrote a bankruptcy trust called the Constitution so that they could operate in bankruptcy. All right, had nothing to do with you, Sally Sue, Johnny, Jim, Bob down the road. They're not the people. You're not the people. I'm not the people. We're not the people. The people are the ones that live in Washington, D.C. as the posterity of the people that created the United States. Okay, so let's just get that clear. Anyone thinking they're going to stand on their constitutional rights, the court will laugh at you and throw you out the door because they know you have no idea what the hell you're talking about. And the courts do not have to and do not have the power to nullify a law because it's unconstitutional. I hope everybody gets that. They don't have the power to do it, okay? Just because a law goes against the essence of the Constitution doesn't mean it's unconstitutional, number one, and they do not have the authority to nullify that law. So they're not going to do it, okay? So let's get that perspective straight. Who are you in relation to the Constitution? Very simple. You're nobody. Okay? The Constitution is for a public organization to organize public affairs. You are not the public. You are the private. It does not apply to you. Now, there are protections in there that do protect a tiny fraction of your rights. Do you know how many rights you have? I mean, you've got more rights than you could probably imagine until you give them all up at birth. But before that, you have more rights than you can imagine. And that Constitution only protects a fraction. Some of the ones that the guys who felt like the Constitution was being written for some sort of nefarious reason, they couldn't quite put their finger on it, made sure that they weren't going to adopt that Constitution, which is not even really adopted, but ratify that until they put some kind of protections in there to, in essence, protect a few rights. That's why the Bill of Rights was put in there, because they didn't trust what this document was being written for. Okay, guys like Patrick Henry, Jefferson wasn't a part of the constitutional conventions. He didn't write anything. He didn't have any say. He was in England at the time. Which is, again, interesting because all of these drafters of this Constitution, most of these guys were English subjects. They were agents of the crown in England. Who the hell's writing this great Constitution for this free country? It sure as hell wasn't an American, because unless it was a Native American, it was an Englishman. Okay, so let's get that straight. So there were very few patriots at the time that did not want to be part of England, okay? And those guys say, well, wait a minute, there's an issue here. We're going to write this Bill of Rights, okay? So anyway, that's the Bill of Rights. So the key is never to use the Constitution to protect you. The key with any constitutional issue is letting them know that they have stepped outside of the Constitution because it's for them. So when you apply the Constitution, you apply it against them as they have broken the Constitution, okay, in their own operation. Not they've broken the Constitution because they did you wrong. No, They screwed up in their own operation and stepped outside of their charter. That's different, okay? So that's the Constitution. So you don't have a right to it. It doesn't apply to you. You can't even use those couple protections at this point because you became a U.S. citizen, all right, which is a franchise, okay? You've got 2 franchises going on. And if you just take this stuff, I just want to preface by saying this. I have learned more law from the law dictionary than anywhere else, okay? Because I look at those terms in the legal dictionary and it tells me so freaking much, you know, that I can jump right into my law encyclopedias here and then look up some of the principles and things that I've seen in the law dictionary, even before I had a law encyclopedia. Okay, I was either at the law library or on Google, and I would find this stuff in very trusted sources like Cornell Law. You know, I would look at these things, and I would see them in the law dictionary, and I would say, shit, man, this is a great concept. So with that, I'm always in the law dictionary, always, 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 and it leads me to the next piece. Now, once you learn that language, because you're constantly in the law dictionary, you can smoke these dudes because it's all language. So if you know the language better than they do, you can smoke them, wrap them up, tie them up in a knot, and have them sitting there dumbfounded because they don't even understand their own language. So that is very important. All right. So I want to preface by saying that the law dictionary and the study of the law through the language is so extremely important. Not only that, but you also have 2 different viewpoints of what's going on. You see your viewpoint, which is you're a private man or woman and you're a child of God and they have no right over you. All well and good. That's private. Okay, that's private. That's got nothing to do with the government. All right, and then you have the government, which has statutory regulation for its citizens and subjects and things like that. When I hear people say, oh, this law means this, or oh, this law means that, look what this says, and I read it and I go, the courts did not interpret that statute that way. And you're out there blasting it all over the internet that this is what this means. No, it does not mean that. Not in their world. And if it's their world that you have an issue with, do you think you're going to bring your world into their world so that your world trumps their world? That's not going to work. It's their world. They wrote the statutes. So when you're looking at a statute, don't take some guys on the internet's interpretation. The statutes are interpreted by the courts if they're taken outside of their plain ordinary meaning, or you know, you can't understand their plain ordinary meaning. You look to the case law to interpret the statute. I will give you an example and probably have about 50 million people flipping shit when they watch this video and disagreeing with me, and I really don't care. Okay, I think it's 15 USC 2003. Something like that, 2003, 850, I forget, or 28 USC 2003, 815, something like that. It's the one that says the United States is a federal corporation. Totally taken out of context, misinterpreted, ridiculousness, okay? It is not saying that the United States is a federal corporation. It is saying that federal corporations are the United States and can have a claim brought against them in the name of the United States, okay, because they were created by the United States. That's what that statute is saying, and that is a federal rule of civil procedure. Why do you think it's in the federal rules of civil procedure? So when you bring a claim against an agency that was created by the United States and it's in fact a corporation, it's considered the United States even though it's a corporation. Not that the United States itself is a corporation. I mean, this has been blown. I've seen this 10 years ago and I read the statute and I'm like, it's not even what it says. That's not what it says. It's, you know, people want to go after the enemy and point the finger so bad. Look, here's the evidence. It's not the evidence. You use that shit in some sort of legal argument and you're going to get slammed. and it's not going to work. Okay, so then what happens is people on the internet looking for some relief, they see this, they run out there, I'm going to put this in my paperwork and they're going to know I know they're a corporation, and they go, idiot, you're not even close. You're so far off. Just go get an attorney, okay? Because they know you don't know what the hell you're doing. So, you know, a lot of that needs to be negated by your own research and your own study. So, again, we want to get to the very essence of inherent rights and how to apply certain concepts and the civil law. So, civil law created by the Romans for the most part. You know, I mean, it's all Rome. You're a subject, you know, you're subject to it by being a citizen of that structure, that United States, all of that. That's done at birth. So, civil law, that's how they function. Civil law. Yes, they have criminal law, but it's quasi-criminal at this point, okay? Because really the only criminal law is when there is a real injury to someone or their property. Right? That is criminal, and the intent to cause that injury, because an injury by accident is not a crime. It's the only crime, okay? Everything else is civil. And in my opinion, this is my opinion, not my interpretation, but I find it awfully interesting that the Federal Rules of Civil Procedure say there shall be one course of action, the civil action. Then when you go over to Federal Rules of Criminal Procedure, it doesn't talk about a course of action at all. It just goes into procedure. Well, where's the criminal action? How do you go into the procedure when it doesn't even give you the authority to file a criminal action under the rule? So they're all civil. My opinion, not my interpretation, just my, you know, analytical thinking of things says, well, that's awfully interesting, right? So anyhow, we get into civil law. Civil law has 3 categories. Look them up in the law dictionary. Okay, 3 categories of civil law: law of status, law of property, law of obligation. If you're not handling those 3 correctly on the record or on any record, you don't have a claim. And if you don't have a claim, they have a claim. And if they have a claim, you're probably screwed, okay? Because they're going to bring any claim against you because they have the authority to your property. You guys have to bear with me a minute. I got to plug my laptop in here. So you've got the 3 civil law categories. And again, let's go over them one more time. Law of status, law of property, law of obligation. What is obligation? Well, contract, right? I mean, when you agree to do something, you're obliged. Contract. And I'm having trouble getting to my charger here, so bear with me. So, what happens at birth? Obviously, you come out of the womb, they enter you into a contract. Yes, a minor can enter into a contract. Don't let anybody tell you that they can't. That's a bunch of bullshit for all these gurus on the internet. But can't enter a minor into a contract, it's void. No, that's a lie. A minor can contract. Okay, so it's a future contract, and it will take effect once the minor is of age, right? Of the age of majority, which means the age to contract. So they come in, they create this franchise. How do they create the franchise? Very easy, okay? Your parents go in. Why is your father and mother not wed on the certificate of live birth? Now, they may not have been wed to begin with. That happens a lot, a lot more today than it did back then. However, my parents were wed, and it had my mother's maiden name and not her married name. So if you look up the definition of husband in Black's Law 4th Dictionary, it will say, etymologically, okay, the etymology of husband is house bond, right? Why? Because the husband is the executor, okay? The executor executes the administration of the estate, okay? So he bonds whomever is in his house, okay, in his family. This is very powerful family law shit starting from the beginning, that these concepts, if you can grasp them and carry them through everything and perfect your claim, it's powerful. You have something to stand on at that point. That's called standing. Remember the status, law of status, standing, okay? Let's get back to that. So you get back to the house bond, the husband. How come the husband's name, or the mother on the certificate of live birth doesn't take the husband's name? Okay, that's because she is the informant. She's ratting out the husband. She's ratting them out, saying, oh, they need to, you know, here, they need to register this property, and I'm going to inform you of the property that they're administrating over here. Okay, she's now ratting. It's why it says informant. So the mother, or informer, so the mother is informing them that there's this piece of property here, this estate, for this child. The child comes out, what do? They take the footprint, put it on the application, which then becomes a certificate of the application. Why is the footprint? Because that's the child's first landmark, okay? Now we've stolen the child's right to even own property, to even step on the land. We've taken that from them, bam. And this is all by consent. You don't have to register your child at birth, but they force you to do it, just like they did in Rome. This is no different, people. Hello, 2,000 years, we're still doing the same thing, okay? They were pauper certificates back in the day, hello. So they now create the first franchise. That's your upper and lower case, first, middle, and last name on the certificate of live birth, which is the abstract of the application. All right, and from that, they create a second franchise, which they then attach the account to, the Social Security account. That's the birth certificate. That's the second franchise. That is the trust, where the trust is set up and all of that. But it's not your trust. It's got nothing to do with you. It's held in trust. All right, so again, bailment. Look up the term bailment. You're bailing property over. Here you go. You guys go ahead and hang on to this for your benefit. Right, or mutual benefit, okay? So there's three ways a bailment can happen: for my benefit, for your benefit, or for mutual benefit, okay? You bail that property over to them. Again, you have to look at family law to see who the executor is. What is the executor? What does an executor do? An executor is not part of a trust. So if you're thinking about trust and you're saying, well, there's an executor in a trust, no, there is not. An executor does not belong in a trust. The executor doesn't have a position in a trust. It doesn't even know. Just get it out of your mind. An executor executes the administration of an estate for a decedent. All right, someone that is not dead but is dying. Decedent does not mean dead. It means in the process of dying. Okay, so let's get that straight too. All right, so the decedent, bam, you're the executor. You're administrating the estate. But if you're not covering the three categories of civil law, you don't have a claim. You've got nothing. Okay, so that is why it's important to declare, number one, your status first. Okay, you've got to declare who you are, what you are in relation to these entities, and you've got to make that a public record. I don't care how you make it a public record, but it's got to be out there in the public. All right, so you do that. So you put your claim in on your status. Now you're starting to handle the what? The category of civil law, one of three: law of status, declaration of status. You're starting to handle it. This is an equitable procedure here. You're doing your equity. You're saying, I'm going to handle this status. I'm going to correct this status. There are other things to do that help back up your status correction. Cancel your voter registration. Okay, things like that. So when I canceled my voter registration, I did a revocation of election to the IRS, and said, I'm done with you guys. Here's where I have a right to revoke this under your IRC, blah, 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 the whole bit there, bam. Send it out, certified mail, return receipt requested. They've got it, got copies of it, got them stamped it at Ogden, Utah. No way out, right? They received it. You've been notified. So anyway, you make your claim, do your declaration of status. You got to notify the holders of the alien property, right? The custodians of the alien property. Because remember, all this was taken during wartime, in an emergency. We're still in an emergency. We've never been out of an emergency. We're in a perpetual emergency, which is, again, why the president can write executive orders like they're going out of style, okay? Because when there's an emergency, the Constitution is suspended. Well, there's been an emergency. The emergency hasn't left, okay, since the Constitution, okay? It has not left. We've always been in an emergency. Whether it's declared daily or not makes no difference. If it's declared and it's not resolved, it's still an emergency, okay? So you've got the emergency going on. All right, you've got to notify the alien property custodians under the Emergency Banking Relief Act, as amended by the Trading with the Enemy Act, where you tie those two together. You notify the custodians. Who are they? They are the Attorney General, the Secretary of the Treasury, and the President. Now, in my opinion, if I'm making a claim on something that's registered and filed in the state, I'm going to notify the governor and the Secretary of State of that state too. So I'm going to, and the Attorney General of that state, I'm going to CC them on it, let them know that everybody else was notified, the Treasury and the whole bit. And even though the state Treasury is involved as well, I just notify the governor, Attorney General, and the Secretary of State, because notice to principals, notice to agents, you guys are all notified. It's the President of the United States, the Secretary of the Treasury, the United States Treasury, and the Attorney General that is listed in the Trading with the Enemy Act, not the states. So just the fact that I give the states notice is enough. So I CC all of them, all right? But when I do an administrative process, it's a notice and a contract. It is a contract by nature, and it's actually an affidavit declaration / contract by nature, okay? It's a notice in form. So it's still notice, but by nature and substance, it's a contract. And that's where you want to get them. And you don't want to make it extremely complicated, because you want to give them things that should be easy to ascertain, or facts that should be easy to give back to you. Do you have an ownership right? Do you have any right, title, and interest in this registered organization? And why do I call it a registered organization? Because everything is in commerce. We can agree to that. That's very easy to point out. And if you look at Uniform Commercial Code, Article 9, Section 1, Article 9, 9-102A 71, definition, registered organization, it clearly says in there that a registered organization is formed by the filing of an organic public record. Well, when the registrar signs that application and files and records it, that's the public record with the county registrar. When they file it with the vital statistics, it just became a registered organization. That is one of the linchpins. There are several. That's one of them. Bam. This fits that definition. We've got a problem here if you're going to try to say this is not a registered organization, because it says on there that once it's registered and a certificate, well, it doesn't say a certificate, I have to read the exact statute, but it says a copy of that, a copy of the record is then issued by the United States or a state. Well, hello, what's the copy of the record? The certificate. Okay, that is a registered organization. So that's key. So you're claiming in your status change and your administrative process, bam, this is a registered organization. And do you or do you not have authority or ownership of right, title, or interest in this registered organization? And if you do not, you agree to the following, and lay out your contract, okay? You have 30 days to provide that. Again, if not, you agree to this. That's a tacit agreement. And why? And people want to know, well, why did they have to answer it? How, like some attorneys that are ignorant in this stuff, they go, oh, well, that's like if I walk down the street and you come up to me and you go, here's a contract, and if you don't answer, we're in a contract. It doesn't work that way. No, that's not what this is. You're considered a quote-unquote debtor. A debtor under any contractual obligation from birth has a right to have the information disclosed to them by the creditor. So if the United States or the state is claiming to be the creditor, you damn well have a right to renegotiate the contract. That's what your administrative process is. Okay, these are all legal concepts and law concepts that if you understand them, you can back up what you're doing. Okay, that's important. If you don't understand them, you shouldn't be playing, because no piece of paper on this earth is going to do anything for you. I don't give a shit how well it's written. I don't care, because when somebody gets you in front of them and they go, what's this say? Oh, what's this mean? Oh yeah, what concept does that follow? What legal theory are you using? Where is that from? And you go, oh, well, you know, Johnny Smith on the internet sold it to me for 25 bucks. They're going to go, sorry, fine, in prison, whatever, you know. It's the same reason that these people, they all get in trouble with UCC, because they think they're a secured party creditor. They have no idea what a secured party creditor even is, or what it does, you know, or why they would even want to be one. They just think there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So anyway, you take care of the status. In that status, you're also going to take care of the obligation in that declaration. You're going to say, I'm not obliged anymore. Okay, I am done. I cancel all contracts that I did not have full disclosure of the facts, and no one gave me full disclosure on anything. So I'm nullifying and canceling every contract, nunc pro tunc ab initio, okay, which means for now as then, from the beginning. All right, so I'm canceling everything right now as if it was then, from the very beginning of time. Okay, so nunc pro tunc ab initio, cancel, 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 cancel. I'm not the trustee. I am not the surety. I'm not any of that stuff. Just so this is clear on the public record now. I've got this clear. So you're taking care of the law of obligation. Okay, so now you have the law of status, the law of obligation, and at the same time, you're also attacking the law of property, because you're saying this is a piece of property. I have a right to the property, okay, because you have not stepped up and made a claim to the property. So if you have not stepped up and made a claim to the property, I'm making a claim on the property. Now, once that declaration of status is recorded and you have that in the public realm, okay, somewhere where it can be viewed or pulled, a certified copy can be obtained, okay, it's in the public realm, cool. You just declared to the world who you are in relation to it and everything else. That's all well and good. That's not going to get your bills paid. That's not going to have your mortgage taken care of. That's not going to get you out of a speeding ticket. It's none of that. So anybody using a declaration of status and turning it into someone like it's going to do something for them clearly has missed the point and probably should get fined, imprisoned, or jailed, because they really should not be out in the world operating, in my opinion. You know, it's not what this stuff is for. It's not get out of jail free. It's about responsibility. So you do the declaration of status. Now that you've handled those three categories in your declaration, that's when you give the notice in the administrative process, so that the other side has time to respond and either agree with your status, obligation, relation to the property in relation to the obligations, or not. And if they disagree, they're going to have to put it in writing and swear to it. They're probably not going to do that. They're going to agree by tacit acquiescence, okay? It's very simple. They don't respond, they've agreed. And again, for those people that want to say, well, that doesn't hold up, it damn well does hold up when you know how it works, okay? You are considered a debtor. If I'm considered a debtor, again, I'm gonna keep regurgitating this stuff. The creditor has to disclose the information to me. If the country of the United States or the state is claiming to be the creditor over me, okay, not a problem. You're saying there's a contract here, obviously, right? Because you can't really do anything without a contract. The Constitution's a contract. I mean, it is a contract, right? And you're saying I'm a part of that contract when, in essence, I'm not a part of that contract. I got nothing to do with that contract. So If that's what you're saying, then disclose the information to me. And if you can't, I renegotiate the terms of any implied or express contract that's ever existed. Now, you and I are in a contract because you have the obligation, since you were claiming that you had authority over me as a creditor, etc. So they have an obligation to respond. They have an obligation to say, no, we're the ones with the right title and interest to this property, not you. So when they don't, now you have your solidified claim, but you better damn well make sure you sent that stuff registered mail with return receipt, okay? Because you want somebody on the other end that has received it, and you want record of every transaction of mail that you did, okay? Because that is your solid record to stand on. So we do that, okay? Now I get the administrative process. So that part's all done. Now, there are other things you can do with that after that point. All right, like I said, a lot of things, a lot of other maneuvers should be done. You know, you should cancel your voter registration if you ever registered to vote. You should get rid of or do a revocation of election. There's a whole thing with driver's licenses, and I'm going to tell you, here's how I'm going to handle my driver's license. All right, I've already handled it one way, but I haven't really had any issues to put it into to play. So my first way of handling that is, I took, once the law of status, the law of obligation, all that stuff was taken care of, which, by the way, in my status, I also appointed general executor over the estate. All right, that's huge. So the general executor then had has the duty to wind up the estate. So as the general executor, I wound up the estate. Okay, that's what happens in a will. You wind up an estate. And in winding up that estate, I put that estate into a private trust. Okay, now the trust is responsible for that estate and is the surety for that estate, not me. So how I handled my first license was, fine, it's not me that has the license. You can't license me. You can only license the estate. That's all you have control over. You don't have control over me. The only way you get control over me is because I'm stupid, ignorant, and I think that I'm it. But I'm not it, and I've declared that, and I've separated the three categories of civil law. I've established them. That's all well and good now. So I'm not it, okay? So the estate is the one with the licenses, not me. So the estate gets the license, fine. But again, what good is that if you cannot back it up? What good is it if you have no idea where to go to back up what you've done? It's no good. So I'm sorry, but research is necessary. Understanding is necessary. You know, if it's just a piece of paper you're looking for and trying to find a way out, it's not going to work. You have to apply the concepts, and you have to be bold enough with big enough balls to do it, okay? Because they're going to test you at every turn. They're going to threaten you with jail, okay? They're going to threaten to destroy your entire life. And guess what? If you really don't care to own anything or have anything, that's not a threat anymore. That's, oh, well, thank you for your offer. No, thanks. I'm good. You know, oh, we're going to throw you in jail for 30 years. Cool. Thank you for your offer. I'm good. And when they don't see you sweat, they're like, fuck, you know, so they try another maneuver and another maneuver, and it's all legal shit that they're going to try on us to, get us to fear so that we fall down. They'll either fear us to death or they'll run us dry with money, and they'll drag the shit out so we can't afford things. That's why court is no good, okay? There is no court. That is all about the estate. Going back to the license. The license is given to the estate. That's how I handled it the first way. Now, I'm going to have to get another license in another state. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's my thinking. I'm going to go in there and say, I need a license. And I'm going to go, wait a minute. All your signs in here, because most of the MVAs and DMVs in the countries have customer signs that say customer service. You're saying I'm a customer. That means this is a consumer transaction, which means there has to be a contract here. Now, I need to speak to someone in this office right now so I can see the terms and conditions of the license contract. I need to see that. I can't sign a contract conscionably until I see the terms and conditions. Where's the terms and conditions? And you know you're going to get, you know, the woman at the front desk is, I don't know what you're talking about, sir. Oh. So you bring the manager out here, you get the manager out here. Well, I'm not really sure. Okay, you want to get to the county attorney. I want the county attorney right now. Right now. I need some questions answered, county attorney. You're telling me if I am not licensed and I go out on the road, you're going to have me arrested. You're going to have me fined. You may even have me imprisoned. But you're not telling me what the terms and conditions of the contract are so I can negotiate that and agree or not agree. So what is it? It's either we're in a contract or we're not. If we're not in a contract, then you don't have a right to tell me I can't travel down that road. You've got no business there. So which is it? And they're going to be fucked because what are they going to do? You can't lock me into an unconscionable contract. To sign a contract without any terms and conditions is an unconscionable action. That is stupid. That is ignorance. If you're telling me you can't give me the terms and conditions to your contract, or I can't change your terms and conditions to your contract, and you're going to force that contract on me, that is against the law. Sign this, please. Okay? And I'll write something up that says, you know, refuse the terms, we can't give the term, whatever. I'll figure it out how to write it up. But basically the point is going to be that someone's going to sign a piece of paper that says, we've refused to give you a license. Great. Thank you. Bam, out the door. Hey, I tried to get a license. You guys refused it. It's right here. Look, so-and-so signed it. I'll tell you. So it's private property. It's privately registered. It's in a trust. It's not mine. You know, total private conveyance. You know, there's no lien on it. There's no loan on it. All that's done. It's thinking outside and setting things up according to contract because it's all contract. Everything is contract. So if you start thinking in terms of contract, how do contracts work? They work off negotiation, agreement, okay, meeting of the minds, agreement, okay, consideration, which is really just one right traded for another, or one right traded for a privilege, or something like that is really all consideration is. You know, it doesn't have to be money. So when you think about contract and how all this works, it's the same thing with the registered entity and the birth certificate. You know, same thing with U.S. citizenship. It all boils down to contract. But if you cannot get the upper hand on the contract and stand your ground and prove it, it's going to fail. It is always going to fail. Okay, one of the strongest positions you could take is the general executor, I should say, position. All right, that is the, you know, that law, family law, is well above their law. That comes down from God. Okay, God gave you the body as a man with the seed. He gave you the body as the woman to grow the seed, to give life, okay? They can't control that unless you give that up at birth. That's the only way they can control it. So you got to take that, you know, thing and shift it around and make sure that you are always a child of God, okay? From the family clan or the house of. That's who you are. You don't have a last name. You have a family name that's bestowed upon you as an estate. Okay, remember the word husband comes from house bond. Okay, look it up. Black's Law 4th, house bond. Let's bond these estates. Not a problem. I'm going to give you a bond. Okay, here's a silver surety bond. And all it says is, if there's any damages, let me know. I will pay you in lawful money. Okay, the only money that I have, okay, to discharge a debt or to pay a debt under Article 1, Section 10, I will give to you. How much? How much do you need? You know, how much silver do you need? Oh, you don't take silver? Oh, so you don't take lawful payment of a debt. So what does the UCC say about that? Okay, if you tender payment and it's refused without dishonor, they don't give you, they didn't, or they, I shouldn't say that, actually it's refused, it's dishonored without a reason. When it's a perfectly good tender, there is discharge. So it doesn't matter if they take silver from you or not. If they take the bond and they refuse to allow you to settle or discharge the charges, that is discharge anyway, because you gave them a perfectly good tender. You tendered with an offer to pay in silver or gold. So if they refuse that, that's discharge. Okay, so that becomes part, again, of your obligation. 3 categories of civil law: law of obligation, law of property, law of status. Handle those 3 at all times in every contractual relationship. This becomes a lot easier when you start looking at contractual relationships. You always have a right not to contract. And you also have a right to change the terms of a contract as a debtor, as long as you notice the other party and they fail to provide specific information or specific contract disclosures. It's really not that hard. In concept, it's not hard to understand. It's hard to apply. Okay, and I agree with that. It is difficult to apply because you're dealing with such an ignorant society that has been brainwashed in ignorance. So, you know, that's some of the things I really have been hitting me, you know, the past couple days, and I haven't been out doing anything on Facebook. I took my YouTubes down and things like that for good reason. You know, no, the government didn't come in, some secret force didn't take my YouTubes off. I did that, all right, because I didn't want to be out there like that. At that point. So again, you know, this is all about settling claims. This is not about headhunting. It's not about witch hunting. It's not about going after their money because you think it's yours or you think you have a right to it. No, it's about correcting the balance. And when you correct the balance of things, then the system itself changes, okay? And quite honestly, we don't even need to change the system, okay? We have a right to create our own. We could create our own. You know, but if people would make these guys in these agencies follow their own law by going after them, okay, the system would change because these guys break their own laws all day long, every day. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of them, millions of them breaking laws every day because they don't know their own laws. If you can't understand the 8 million laws that are out there, how do you think they're going to? If you can't follow them every single day, how do you think they are? Well, they're the ones that the laws apply to. So once you change the status and the obligation, the status of obligation and the property relationship, guess what? You're in a superior position. Most of those laws don't apply to you because they're not laws, they're statutes. Okay, that the statutes and the codes apply to whom? Them and their registered organizations. Okay, so you want to change the system? That's what you do. You go after them, but you don't headhunt. You go after them when a true injury has occurred, because you're not going to be able to get anything unless you can prove an injury. So a true injury has occurred, and then you go after them in such a way that you use an attorney, okay, because an attorney can go after them, and you go after them in a settlement. And I'm going to talk about attorneys real quick because everybody in the Freedom Patriot community hates attorneys. But the funny thing is, no one's looking at the fact that most attorneys don't represent people. Okay, they represent corporate interests or their corporate counsel or something. They're not even in courts fighting against the people. They're just in there doing business. Okay, most attorneys. So to say that all attorneys are, evil is just not accurate. They're not. There are some good-hearted attorneys out there that are looking at this stuff, that do see this stuff, and they see it and they go, shit, man, you know, I was duped. I was duped. I thought I was going to be an attorney to do good, and I can't now. Now I've built my life off it. I've got a family. I've got kids, you know, I gotta keep food on the table, and this is all I know. Shit, you know, I'm in a real pinch here. So you can't blame every attorney out there, because a lot of them are awake. And I've happened to meet a few very awake and good attorneys. I mean, very good and sweet, very sweethearted people, you know, very humanitarian type people. They're not out there to, you know, hang everybody as an agent of the crown. They know they're an agent of the crown. They admit it, you know, but they've come to me because they want to understand. They don't have the time to research a lot of the stuff that I've already researched. So they're coming to me to say, hey, let me know where this is. Let's talk about this. Let's build something. And I'm like, cool, great, let's do that. You know, so kind of having fun, because we're getting to see, you know, both sides. And I may even go to take the bar to get my Juris Doctorate as well. Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to become an attorney, but if I have a Juris Doctorate behind me, it's going to be kind of hard for anybody to discredit me at that point. You know, because right now, you know, in the industry, I get discredited all the time. I don't, but I'm saying I could, simply because I don't have, you know, some sort of Juris Doctorate degree or piece of paper. However, I have the opportunity to do that, so I may well do that. But anyway, I hope this really gives you more, you know, clarity on things. Again, I regurgitate the same things over and over for a reason, because they are really the only principles at play here. You know, once we get into societies and international law and stuff like that, it does go kick up a notch. But for right now, these principles are under everything. It's contract, 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 contract. That's it. You know, it's not constitutional rights. It's not free man on the land. It's not sovereignty. It's none of that. It is contract. Contract. Law of status, law of property, law of obligation. Okay? Those are the three elements, the three categories of civil law. You corner them and you've got a leg up on your contracts. But you got to corner them. And there, again, there's several things you can do to corner them. You know, the UCC, I only used a UCC 1 just to make public notice in their realm, in their international law, okay, because it's really the UCC belongs to DC, that, hey, there's an interest on this entity, and it's not you. So if there's any claim against you, you better be paying out on the first interested party here who has an interest in this. So that's the only reason I did a UCC. And I know how to use a UCC. I can cut out a UCC 3 as payment if I want to. Here, take a chunk of that lien, payment, payment, payment. But I don't, because I'm not going through that rigmarole just for something stupid. If I had to, I could. And I have cut out UCC 3s, basically assigning interest to other entities, but not government agencies or anything. It's all private. I do my private entities. I don't need to, you know, just because I'm giving public notice of my private interest does not in any way confer any sort of jurisdiction over to the state or the federal government. It doesn't confer just jurisdiction. Then it just notifies everybody that there's an interest in this thing. Okay. Security, right? Security interest. I mean, it's the UCC's for, you know, doing business like that. So I haven't touched Truth and Trust website in probably a year and a half, but I'm going to dive into that and some other things, creating another site and all that. It's been a long time coming. It's been a lot of stuff, you know, going into it, but I'm excited to work on that and working on my own issues, which I will definitely present to everyone as it unfolds and as certain things occur, so that people can see this is how I handle certain things. So I'll be dealing with the IRS. I'll be dealing with some other issues. I've already got For anybody out there, let's just talk about that real quick, a little IRS tidbit. If you have a lien out there, okay, or a notice of lien recorded against you, and you didn't fill out any returns, okay, for those years that they're liening you, you need to look on the IRS notice of lien itself. And my friend Paul Andrew Mitchell brought this to my attention, and I'm glad he did, because it made it so much simpler than I could have imagined. And I've had these liens sitting there for a few years now, just because I'm like, how am I gonna, what do I really want to do with this? How do I don't want to go in and muddy this up. I don't want to do a bunch of Patriot garbage and try to, get rid of these liens. They're not bothering me. I don't use credit or anything, so it's like, I don't even care. So the opportunity presented itself. Paul brought some very good information. He's absolutely correct. The notice federal tax lien says on it, on the actual notice, assessment, the word assessment 4 times, okay? Great, provide the assessment, because if I didn't self-assess it, where did you get the assessment? Who's certifying that? How did they get the numbers together? What numbers? Where did they come from? All right, where's the assessment? It also says notice and demand was sent. Okay, fine, send me the notice and demand, send me the mailing, show me, all of the evidence that you sent out a notice and demand. Okay, how do we ask them? What do you ask them to provide that in? A FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. You can get them to admit so much shit by a FOIA as long as you're asking for the right things under the FOIA. You can't just go and ask them for any information under the FOIA. However, if you're asking them for information that pertains to your particular record with that agency, they have to give it to you. Okay, so what I did was I said, okay, well, hey, FOIA request. I need you to provide, I don't know, it was like 7 or 8 things, okay? One of which was the assessment, and the other of which was the notice and demand. So they wrote back and they said, well, here's your assessment, which is garbage because there's no oath on it or nothing. There's nothing on it. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's not an assessment. That's a joke. Actually, I think their humor is rather interesting. So I get that back and I laugh. I go, well, that's a sad attempt. And then after that, they admitted, we don't have a notice and demand, and we have no mailing evidence that we've ever mailed anything to you. Really? Let me get this straight. You put a lien against me, or what you call a lien, without ever notifying me that I was delinquent, without ever noticing me and demanding payment, and then you lien me? Now, if you were watching this from the beginning and you heard me talk about maybe like 20 minutes, 30 minutes ago about doing an administrative process and just walking up to someone on the street and say, hey, we're in a contract, you owe me. Well, of course that doesn't work because they don't know you from Adam, they don't owe you anything. It's the same thing. They just did that to me. Hey, you owe me, but they never gave me a notice and demand. They never demanded it. They didn't demand anything. They didn't follow their own procedure. So now I'm like, all right, now I get to go to the commissioner and say, hey, commissioner, remove the lien ASAP. You've also held up my passport application, which I can't get one now. So you've restricted my right to travel under false pretenses without following your own procedure. That sounds like a settlement to me. How much are we going to go for here? You have affected my inalienable inherent right to travel. Now what? That's how we need to think. How, contracts, who's doing what? What's the verbiage? Where's the obligation? How do I get the information from the other party? How do I get them to disclose things? Those are the types of things that you have to think about. The rest is all just paper. It's just expressing and doing the right procedures. And you should look at legal documentation. You should look at the form, okay? Form is not important. It really isn't, okay? However, it's kind of like I used to say with rock bands, because I've been in rock bands for years, and I used to tell the guys all the time, look, obviously the first thing is you need to play well. You need to know your instrument. You need to be a good musician. And it doesn't matter what you look like. You can be a phenomenal musician. Substance, you got to have substance. But let's think about the form here. How many more gigs are you going to get when you look good? And I don't mean you have to be handsome. All I mean is you have to have some kind of cohesive look. That's the form. You're going to get more, you're going to get further when you combine a good form with absolute substance. In other words, when you're writing your legal paperwork, if I write legal paperwork and it just looks like, I don't know, whatever, it doesn't fit their form, true, the substance is still there. I get it. And it can stand up. I've done it. I've done things without their form and stuff. But when I keep the nature and the substance of it and I put it in their form, so it's like, Lipo, we better look at this now because this is all we recognize as form. We don't know anything else but form. And, now we can go into procedure. But if you give them something that doesn't look like their form, this is just bullshit, and they throw it aside. It's not bullshit. It's just that they're trained to think that form really matters. So that's why I always try to at least put things in a, not always, I have since tried to put things into a format now that fits their form, just so it's recognized, and so it's so it's taken seriously, right? So anyway, that's my spiel today for the first time in a long time. Hopefully I'll do some more of these. I got to get a format down to do some more educational stuff coming up, but I'm working on my own thing, so time is kind of tight. And I hope everybody has a good day. Thank you for checking this out. Pass it along. Hopefully it educates people. Yeah, we'll see y'all in the future. So everybody have a great day, and see you next time.